In a small city, where the police force was close-knit and the legal system rarely challenges authority, Officer Brad Keller had always believed that his badge was a shield that made him untouchable. He'd built a reputation for being tough on troublemakers, and he wore his uniform with a swagger that made some uneasy and others envious. Therefore, he didn't anticipate any resistance when he pulled over a black woman in a sharp navy suit for a minor traffic violation. She handed over her registration and license silently, calmly, and courteously. He smirked, however, thinking that the military ID hidden behind her driver's license was just another attempt to avoid a ticket. "Are you military?" he asked, his tone dismissive. "Officer, yes. American Lieutenant Colonel Dana Brooks, Army," she replied in a steady voice. Keller barely glanced at the ID before writing her a citation, making a show of his authority. "You people always think you're above the law," he muttered under his breath, loud enough for her to hear. Dana's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. She accepted the ticket, thanked him, and drove off, maintaining her dignity, until he was asked to testify in court a week later. Keller had no further thoughts about it. The judge presided over the packed courtroom with stern expression. Keller strutted to the stand, ready to recount his version of events. However, the room fell silent as the defense attorney called the defendant. Dana Brooks stood, her medals shining and her uniform spotless. She turned to face Keller after walking to the front of the courtroom. She said, her voice ringing with authority, "I'd like the court to acknowledge my military service and rank before we proceed. Your Honor." After reviewing her credentials, the judge gave a nod. "Lieutenant Colonel Brooks, your record is exemplary. Thank you for your service." Keller's confidence faltered as Dana addressed the court. "I was pulled over for a minor infraction, but what followed was not standard procedure. My credentials were denied. I was treated with disrespect, and someone said that you people thought you were above the law. I'd like to provide evidence with audio from the stop." The recording played, Keller's words reverberating throughout the courtroom. The judge's face darkened. "Officer Keller, can you give me a reason for your behavior?" Keller mumbled something before realizing that his badge would not shield him from the truth. Dana maintained her cool as she stood tall. "Respect is earned rather than required. While my service to this nation does not entitle me to a free pass, it does merit recognition. No one, regardless of race, gender, or uniform, should be treated as less than." The judge disregarded the citation and criticized Keller for his actions after the crowd murmured in agreement. "This court expects better from those sworn to serve and protect," the judge said sternly. As Dana left the courtroom, heads turned in admiration. Keller was left to face the repercussions of his arrogance after once being so certain of his untouchability. The story spread quickly, a lesson in all that true authority comes not from a badge, but from character, courage, and respect for others, no matter who they are or what they look like. The conflict in the courtroom had reverberated throughout the city like a stone dropped into still water. Officer Keller's public embarrassment and Lieutenant Colonel Dana Brooks' dignified stand quickly spread to the courthouse staff and social media, where local reporters' tweet about the incident went viral. The audio recording, released as part of the public record, was picked up by local news stations, and soon the story was being discussed on morning radio shows and in coffee shops all over town. For many, Dana became a symbol of quiet strength and the power of standing up to injustice with grace. From fellow service members, community leaders, and even strangers who had seen the story online, she received messages of support. She was praised by some for her bravery in the face of disrespect, others for her military service, and many for demonstrating that dignity can be a potent countermeasure to prejudice. Dana, for her part, was both humbled and a little overwhelmed by the attention. She had not sought the spotlight. Her only goal had been to defend her own integrity and, perhaps, to make the officer think twice before treating someone else the same way. She returned to her duties at the nearby Army base, where her commanding officer called her in to personally commend her for her composure and leadership. "You represented the Army and yourself with honor, Colonel," he said, shaking her hand. "We're proud to have you in our ranks." Officer Keller, on the other hand, was the focus of a completely different kind of attention. The public and city officials exerted pressure on the police chief to initiate an internal investigation into Keller's actions. In a statement acknowledging the incident, the department's public information officer promised to reaffirm our commitment to professionalism and respect in all interactions with the public. Keller was placed on administrative leave until the investigation's conclusion. He felt the weight of real accountability for the first time in his professional life. His co-workers, who had previously been quick to support him and laugh at his jokes, now keep their distance out of fear of getting involved in the controversy. Some of them secretly admitted that they had previously observed Keller cross the line, but had not spoken up. Now, with the city watching, silence was no longer an option. The city council called a special meeting to address concerns about police conduct and bias. The chamber was full of members of the community, many of whom were inspired by Dana's example to share their own experiences with disrespect or mistreatment from law enforcement. Dana accepted the invitation to speak, despite her nervousness. Standing before the council, she spoke not just of her own experience, but the broader need for empathy, training, and accountability. Respect is not a privilege reserved for a few, she said. It is a right owed to every citizen, regardless of their background or the uniform they wear. We must improve. We can do better. The council unanimously approved the implementation of new training programs centered on de-escalation, cultural competency, and implicit bias after hearing her speech, which received a standing ovation. The police department, eager to restore public trust, invited Dana to participate in the development of these programs. She agreed, determined to capitalize on the opportunity for positive change presented by her experience. Dana collaborated with police officers, trainers, and community leaders to design seminars and workshops that challenged preconceived notions and encouraged open discussion over the following few months. She told her story, listened to other people, and made sure that difficult conversations could lead to real growth in a setting where they could. Some officers were resistant at first, but many came to respect Dana's perspective and her willingness to engage with them as equals. The process was humbling for Keller. He listened as Dana talked about her service, her values, and how important it is to treat everyone with dignity. He had to go to the training as part of his discipline. He realized, perhaps for the first time, how his words and actions had affected not just Dana, but countless others. In a private moment after one session, he approached her. He said quietly, "Colonel Brooks, I want to apologize. I was wrong, and I'm sorry for how I treated you." Dana gave him a thoughtful look as she stood there. "Thank you, Officer Keller. While apologizing is important, what you do next is more important. Take this opportunity to improve, both for yourself and the people you serve." The encounter marked a turning point for Keller, who began to reflect on his own biases and the culture that had allowed them to go unchecked. He became an advocate for reform within the department, sharing his story with new recruits and urging them to learn from his mistakes. The city began to change as well. Complaints of disrespect and bias dropped, and surveys showed a steady increase in public trust. Dana's example continued to inspire others, and she remained active in the community, mentoring young people and working to ensure that respect and accountability were more than just words. They were the foundation of a better future for everyone. The city's transformation became more apparent as the seasons changed, and Dana Brooks' influence continued to spread. Her suggestions helped shape the police department's new training programs, which became a model for towns nearby. Officers from other jurisdictions attended workshops led by Dana and her team, learning not only about de-escalation and cultural competency, but also about the importance of humility and listening. Dana's story was featured in national publications, and she was invited to speak at conferences on leadership, ethics, and public service. She emphasized repeatedly that her actions in the courtroom were not motivated by retaliation or humiliation, but rather by upholding the principles she had sworn to uphold as a citizen and soldier. She stated to one audience member, "True leadership means standing up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable. It entails using your voice and position to encourage rather than degrade others." Her words resonated with many, and she received letters from young women and men, especially those of color, who saw in her a role model and a source of hope. Officer Keller's journey of self-reflection grew in the meantime. He continued to work with youth programs and volunteer for community outreach events as part of the department's reform efforts. He spoke candidly about his mistakes, admitting that he had once believed his badge made him untouchable, but now understood that true respect had to be earned every day. Some of his former colleagues were skeptical, but others saw the change in him and began to question their own assumptions. Keller was promoted by the department's leadership to a new position as a liaison between the police and the community, where he collaborated with Dana on a number of projects. The leadership of the department understood the significance of having first-hand experience. Their partnership, once unthinkable, became a symbol of what was possible when people were willing to learn and grow. Unity Day, the city's annual celebration of diversity and service, began as a small affair and has grown into a major event. Dana was always the main speaker, and Keller often went on stage with her to tell their story and encourage others to get past mistrust. Standing side by side, the two of them became a powerful representation of progress and reconciliation. Schools invited Dana to speak to students about leadership and resilience, and she started a scholarship fund for young people interested in public service. Her late Vietnam veteran father, who had taught her the significance of courage and compassion, was the inspiration for the fund's name. Dana's family used to be worried about the danger she would face if she spoke out, but now they celebrate her successes and help her every step of the way. The city council, buoyed by the positive changes, passed new policies to ensure transparency and accountability in all city departments. Residents felt empowered to express their ideas and concerns as community forums became a regular part of civic life. The supermarket where Dana had first encountered Keller became a gathering place for neighborhood events, and a mural was painted on its wall depicting people of all backgrounds standing together. The words, "Respect is our strength," in bold letters. Through it all, Dana remained humble, always reminding those around her that the work of building trust and justice was never finished. She mentored a new generation of leaders who were eager to follow in her footsteps and continue to serve in the Army Reserve, balancing her military responsibilities with her work in the community. In the local schools, her story was taught not as a conflict story, but as a lesson in the power of dignity, accountability, and the courage to do the right thing. And as the city thrived, Dana and Keller's unlikely partnership stood as a testament to the idea that even the deepest divides could be bridged with honesty, humility, and a shared commitment to something greater than themselves. Years passed, and the city's transformation became a case study in how a single moment of courage could spark lasting change. Lieutenant Colonel Dana Brooks's name was now synonymous with integrity and leadership, not just in her city, but across the state. She continued to serve in the Army Reserve, rising to the rank of full colonel, and her influence in the civilian world only grew. The scholarship fund she started sent dozens of young people to college, many of whom returned to serve their community as teachers, social workers, and public servants. Dana's mentorship program flourished, and she was often seen at the youth center, listening to the dreams and worries of the next generation. Officer Brad Keller, once a symbol of unchecked authority, was now regarded as a respected individual. Police training videos featured his transformation from arrogance to humility, and he was invited to speak at academies about the dangers of bias and the significance of accountability. He and Dana continue to work together closely, and their friendship is a living example of growth and reconciliation. Together, they led workshops for officers and community members alike, teaching that respect was not a given, but a daily choice. The city's annual Unity Day became a statewide event, drawing crowds from across the region. Dana and Keller stood together on stage each year, sharing their story and encouraging others to see the humanity in everyone they met. The supermarket's mural was updated to feature their likenesses surrounded by children from all walks of life, striving for a mutually beneficial future. The police department's reforms became a model for others, and the city's crime rate dropped as trust between officers and residents deepened. Dana's family, once anxious about her public role, now celebrated her every achievement. Her mother, who had marched for civil rights decades earlier, frequently looked proud as she sat in the front row of Dana's speeches. Dana's younger brother, inspired by her example, joined the city council and championed policy for equity and inclusion. The city's schools taught Dana and Keller's story as part of their curriculum, and students wrote essays about what it meant to be brave, to admit mistakes, and to work for the common good. Dana will never forget the day she stood in that courtroom, defending herself against prejudice with only her honesty and composure. She often told young people, "You don't have to shout to be heard. Sometimes The strongest voice is the one that stands firm and lets the facts speak for themselves. She continued to mentor young officers, reminding them that the badge was not a shield from criticism, but a symbol of service. Keller, for his part, became a mentor to new recruits, urging them to listen, to learn, and to never let pride get in the way of doing what was right. He often quoted Dana's words, "Respect is earned, not demanded," and encouraged his colleagues to see every interaction as a chance to build trust. The transformation of the city was not without its difficulties. There were setbacks, times of tension, and times when old prejudices came back to the surface. However, the community always found its way back to dialogue and understanding thanks to the solid foundation that Dana and Keller had helped to construct. The city celebrated in the main square on the 10th anniversary of the courtroom incident. Dana, now a colonel, and Keller, now a captain and community liaison, stood together as the mayor unveiled a new plaque beneath the mural. It read, "In honor of those who choose courage over comfort, humility over pride, and unity over division, may we always remember that true strength lies in respect for one another." Dana smiled as she looked at Keller as the crowd cheered. She stated, "We've come a long way." Keller gave a muddled nod. "And we're just getting started." As the sun set over the city, families lingered in the square. Children played beneath the mural, and neighbors of every background shared food and laughter. Dana felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that her stand in that courtroom had not only changed her own life, but had helped transform the city, and perhaps, in some small way, the world. And as she walked home that evening, surrounded by friends, family, and the community she loved, she knew that the work of building respect and justice would never truly end, but that every day, with every act of courage and kindness, they were making progress together